Well, good day everyone. It's the Two Ordinary Cops, and we're back. But unfortunately, we haven't got Damo today, so it's the One Ordinary Cop. Damo's been, I'll just say, indisposed. They had a bit of a family accident, which required to get a bit of medical attention, but it's nothing serious. They seem to be on the mend. So unfortunately, you get stuck with Schultzy today, which, I suppose if you think I'm funny, it's all right. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to run you through what's been happening over the last couple of days, really. And part of the reason why I came over to New Zealand, as you know, my partner's from New Zealand, so we come over here quite a bit just to catch up with family, friends, and I do love the South Island. We're down at Invercargill at the moment, which is right down in the bottom end, and it's beautiful down here. Bit rainy, but beautiful. And before I go on, I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I hope you all brought in the new year pretty safely. I did, sleeping, so I must be getting old. But I'm going to give you a bit of an update as to part of the reason why I actually came right down the south for this trip when I came to New Zealand. Now, before I start, as you know, Damo and I and the Two Ordinary Cops, our mission statement is the normalisation of the police force, and that is to show what police go through in their day-to-day lives and some of the troubles they'll come up against. But also to make sure that we look after the boys and girls on the ground, all right? We're not going to look after politicians. We're not going to look after the hierarchy. We're not going to look after the courts. We are looking after the troops that are working on the ground hard every single day. And that is what our outlook is. We want to make sure that they have a good career in the best possible circumstances. So I will also give a shout out to Melanie, Reid, and Sumner in relation to the Boy in the Water podcast. And if you want to hear more about this, it's quite well listened to. It's a Boy in the Water. If you look it up on Apple or Spotify or whatever you want, you'll find it. It's worth a listen. And I got put onto it by a very good friend of mine, who asked me to listen into it, mainly because I'm a cop and I worked as a plainclothes connie and did my detectives and all that sort of stuff. The situation basically is, on the 29th of January 2019, if I get this correct, because I'm doing all this off the top of my head at the moment, Lockie Jones, a bit over 3.5 years old, had to get his nappy changed. Anyway, he took off out of the house. His mother caught up with him just up the road, and while she was talking to a friend, he took off again. He's basically, in the entire walk, he's done close to 1.2 kilometres. He's walked down Grasslands Road, down towards the sewage ponds, or oxidation ponds, as they call it in Gore. And he has walked basically past, there's two ponds. He's walked past the first one. First of all, he's got over a fence, walked down a shingle road, or a gravel road, as we would call it in Australia. He's got over a fence, or climbed over a fence, which isn't that, it's high enough for a 3.5-year-old. It'd be hard to get over. Walk through very long grass, or along a very narrow concrete edge along the edge of these two ponds, pretty much right until the end. He was found later on deceased in the water. The difficulty is he's face up in the water. Basically, the autopsy, or basically part autopsy, has come up to the conclusion there was no water in the lungs. Now, there's talk about a dry drowning. I can't really see how that's happened. If you're a medical expert, correct me. But I know there has been talk of dry drownings in the past, but you have to explain it to me in medical terms on what that means. So, anyway, I got put onto this. I got in contact because I was coming down here because I just wanted to see. You can't really investigate a scene until you've walked it or seen it. So I came down to Gore. We spent a couple of days down there. Thank you to Melanie, Reid and Bonnie for... I got in touch with them and they got straight back to me, who put me on to the boy's father, who wasn't around when he took off. He was separated from his partner at the time. And he was actually down in Invercargill, I think, or pretty close when the boy took off. He works in Gore. So I got to spend the morning with him, meet him and have a good chat to him. And then I caught up with Melanie, Reid, who also brought Karen along, which is a friend of Paul's. And they've been looking into this incident basically since it began. They're not very happy with the police investigation. So they basically asked a lot of questions in relation to the investigation. And so the police did their initial investigation, basically found that he walked all the way down there and jumped in the ponds. There are statements to back this version of events up. So the police really looked into it and basically came back and said the investigation's fine. That's what happened. Anyway, they weren't overly happy with that. And of course, as most people who listen to this know, there will be a coronial investigation, which there was. And the coroner found that he wasn't overly happy with the way the police handled it. It was a debacle. So he has ordered the police and police for not in the Southland area to reinvestigate the incident, which those findings will come out in about 2 weeks' time, roughly. So realistically, I'm waiting for those to come out. I had the joy of talking to a number of people while I was in Gore. I won't mention any of their names, who brought some things to my attention which raises a lot more red flags. I also am looking through the file, which, again, I never said I was the best investigator. I never said I was the best working in crime. I never said I was the best copper. I'm not. But what I do is add a different perspective and look at things differently. I've approached this from an impartial point of view. Even when I first started listening to the podcast, there is no emotion in anything I'm looking at. We caught up with the boy's father, and I know my partner, Miriam, she was emotional when she caught up with him because you can see the loss in his eyes. And I'm sitting there pretty much like a robot just listening. And I did warn them that that's just the way I am after all these years of policing. I don't deal with emotion like normal people do. So I've looked through the file and there are a number of red flags. And I mean a number. What I can see and what I'll allow to be heard today is the fact that the police on the ground, from what I've seen, and the sergeant, if you listen to the podcast, which is Tamariki, or Tamariki, I think he did actually a good job that night, leading the troops, making sure they did everything. He set up a crime scene, which was then removed later on by higher up the chain. The boy was supposed to be sent to either Christchurch or Auckland for forensic pathologist to carry out the autopsy. However, basically within 2 hours of the boy being deceased, it was a complete U-turn, and they got somebody in Gore to do the forensic pathology. Sorry, not the forensic, just the general pathologist to do the autopsy. He didn't want to do it because he said he doesn't work on children, and he's not experienced enough to actually carry out a proper autopsy. However, in the end, he did do it. So there's just a couple of red flags. There's a couple of others. The boy apparently walked. He was barefoot. He walked 1.2 kilometres right down the end where there's no housing. There's basically only sheep and cattle. Right, it's farmland. Right down the end of where he was found in the ponds. And has to walk through long grass over a gravel road. There's no injuries on his feet or legs, which also raises red flags. So they did have a dog handler on the night. The dog handler was the one that found him about close to 2 hours after he was reported missing. So the problem is, though, the dog only picked him up as they were walking around the ponds, and only when they were about 30 metres away from the boy. So there was no other scent picked up before then. He had a pooey nappy, as I've said. And look, I'm going to put a call out there to all the dog handlers that listen to this podcast. If you had a scent on a 3.5-year-old boy, bare feet, with a pooey nappy, would it be picked up in that walk down Grasslands Road and into the ponds area before they got close to where the kid was? So that raises a number of issues or red flags. Was the boy taken there somehow else? And this is things you have to cross off. So what I've told you is basically the alleged facts of what the police concluded. I have a problem with that because mainly I always said, and I told my junior officers, you always have to question everything. Question the victim more than you do the offender. You need to know the truth. So you need to really narrow down in an investigation and find out the facts and then check them off against other information or evidence that you get. So if a person said they're in a certain area, for an investigation like this, and they have got cell phone data, make sure that that person was in that place. Or as much as you can, if there's other people around, other statements, who did you see? Where did you see them? At what time was that? Just a simple checking off to make sure everybody's story is correct and accurate. If it's not, go back and question them again and find out more detail. So these things haven't been done. Basically, the continuation of the investigation after that, none of this has been... I mean, they did do some checks. They took photos and all that sort of thing. And I'll go more into that later on. Even in the investigation of what I've seen of the file so far, it raises a number of red flags. I'm not saying the police have to be perfect, but I would expect a higher level of investigation to have been done. And the reason being, or you should investigate everything seriously, but the reason being, you have a boy, just a little boy. He's 3.5 years old, or just over 3.5 years old. This boy was just a little character. He had a little police vest. He loved police. He had a little police cap, and he used to pretend give people tickets. Everybody that's ever spoken about him said he was just a ball of joy. He loved playing the police officer, always wore his yellow little reflective vest, his police cap. He was just, and you listen to the people that knew him. He was absolutely gorgeous. Now, the biggest honour a police officer can do is to investigate the death of another person. And especially for a little boy, he had his whole life ahead of him. He had everything to look forward to in his life. And it got cut short for one reason or another. And you've heard the alleged facts. However, I think there's enough questions, or there's enough red flags to actually look into it far deeper, just to make sure that that is the correct sequence in what happened. If you listen to Melanie Reid's podcast, The Boy in the Water, you'll hear a lot more of the in-depth red flags. I, since then, have actually picked up a couple more, which I'll go into on a later date. So that's the importance, is to make sure that that's what happened to that little boy. That is the police's job. You can't just write it off as falling in the water when you've got a 3.5-year-old little boy that loved police, that had his whole life ahead of him, and not work at ticking every single possibility off the list. If when you go into it, you'll hear there was also family issues and so on and so forth. Those I won't go into. I won't say much in relation to what I have seen, but the reason being is because I like to make sure that I have all the facts and I can back it up when I actually do release it. It's just the police officer in me. I don't like, you always hear allegations. And look, I heard a lot of allegations while I was in Gore. Some of them probably you think are pretty way out there. However, in talking to some other people, it's plausible. So that's basically where we are at the moment. That's what I am doing. You'll hear more about it in the upcoming episodes, but not for a while. I'm going to make sure that I have every box ticked, and I'm going to do my own review on the information that I have at the time. I'm going to do this because you've got a completely distraught father. The mother won't speak to anybody. She hasn't been involved in this podcast, or as far as I'm aware, the investigation thus far, but I imagine the police have spoken to her. And I'm doing it for Lockie because I think the father will not be happy. He cannot rest easy, and he will live for this for the rest of his life. But at least I think he deserves some answers, and the family deserves some answers, and the public, the general public, deserves some answers. The way I think it's been handled so far, it's a misjustice, and it doesn't reflect very well on police, unfortunately. And I'd hate to say that, but like I said, from what I've seen, the boys and girls on the ground actually did a pretty good job that night. It's only when the hierarchy got involved that bad decisions were made. And we've seen it before. We saw it in the Zach Rolfe. We spoke to Kath Nielsen, Susie Fort. When these investigations happen, departments like a narrative that makes them look good. Unfortunately, like we've also explained, that it makes them look like idiots later on. So my push is just do the right bloody thing. It's not hard. Forget about politics. Forget about all that nonsense. You have a 3.5-year-old boy. I mean, excuse my language, but for fuck's sake, just investigate. That's all you have to do. Do everything. Tick all the boxes. This is, for those people that aren't police, investigating isn't fucking rocket science. It is fucking straight simple. It is, once you've done it 100 times, it is not that hard. You've got to look outside the box sometimes, but it's not that hard. So just do your job to the best ability that you can do it, and that's all we can ask for. So that's basically that in a nutshell, which is going to bring me on another point. And I am sorry, I don't have Damo to bounce off here. But I did read in the paper recently that there's a bit of turmoil in the hierarchy in the Queensland Police. And there was a thing in the Courier Mail where they're talking about, how should commissioners, all the turmoil and all that, and what some of the problems are. The problems I see, and I'm not attacking anybody in the hierarchy of the Queensland Police. I know they've got their own issues and they're dealing with it. And I really don't know enough to comment on, different people within that hierarchy chain. What I will say is this. I think this is my idea, and look, please send feedback if you think that I'm wrong or going down the wrong path. I seriously think they should look at having candidates for the commissioner and only sworn police officers and auxiliaries, and I would say in relation to the Northern Territory Police Force, Aboriginal community police officers, up and including the rank of sergeant, vote. Nobody above that rank can vote for which commissioner they want. Only up to the rank and including the rank of sergeant should actually vote who the next commissioner is. I think that will remove a lot of the political influence, and it might get them to sit there and look at the troops, not so much the department. The department is important. It's a massive organisation that does need to do a job properly, but my experience at the moment, there's flaws in that system, and we've pointed out a few of them in the podcast. So, look, send in your thoughts. If you think I'm going down the right track or not going down the right track, it's just my personal opinion. So take it or leave it. But if you think it's a good idea, let me know. If you don't think it's a good idea and you've got a better idea, let me know. What I want to do is remove political influence from the police force, because we are employed to do a job and to do a job properly. And I don't think there's some circumstances where that is lacking due to political influence. Like I said, we've always got to remain impartial. So, all right. Well, the next thing. So I'm going to lighten this up a little bit before we finish off, and I'm going to say that Queensland Police, sorry, you are a carton. The reason being is a couple of weeks ago, I was heading along, I think it's Leroy Road, and this is in Brisbane. And anyway, I'm driving along after I've dropped some rubbish off at the dump, and I come across, I see some singers getting pulled back across the road, probably about a couple 100 metres in front of me. And anyway, I drive past and I see two coppers there, and they've obviously pulled some stingers back, and I know they got one car, so I thought, oh, that's interesting. So anyway, I've driven past, and on the left-hand side of the road, I see not one, but three cars pulled up, all of them with flat tyres. And looking at the clientele that were getting out of the cars, I don't think any of them were criminals. They just did not fit the profile, let's say. There was no other police around. In fact, I didn't see police again. There were two vans, probably a bit close to a kilometre away. They were heading towards the scene. but they were chatting. I think they were trying to look for, and I suppose because a police car, if an offender's going to run, they're going to keep on driving, even with flat tyres. But in the other sense, there's 3 cars on the side of the road with flat tyres. So, yeah, look, that's a bit of a fucking mistake. So, yeah, look, whoever's involved in that, and if you know them, make sure they pay a carton, because, yeah, that's it's not good. But I see the funny side, and it can happen because, yeah, in the operations, those things happen, unfortunately. And if you're looking for a certain style of car, it can easily happen. And look, all the cars were very similar. I'll just let you know. So, yeah, but it's still a carton. You're not going to get away from it. It's, that's just the way it is. So, look, to finish this off, I'm going to set up, I've got to have a look at the pub again. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but the 9th of January in Christchurch, it's near the centre of Christchurch. I'll be in a pub. It'll come up on my socials, so check it out. From 5 p.m, of course, New Zealand time, because they've got this bloody daylight saving over here. And it doesn't get dark until like 10 o'clock. It's nuts. Anyway, we're not going to go into that. So 5 p.m. on the 9th of January, if you want to have a beer, I will be there in my normal uniform, with Tilden Cops written and Schultzy written underneath. And yeah, come along, I'll buy you beer. And I'll give you a free stubby cooler as well. So, yeah, come and have a yarn. All I want to talk about is the good stories. If you got anything else for me, let me know. As you know, everything remains confidential. I don't mention names, because I don't want anybody else to get in trouble. I'm happy to stick my head out of the trenches, and so is Damo. And we do it carefully. However, that's why we're here. So if you do have some information that you think, even in relation to the boy in the water, then let me know. The other thing, I'll put out another call again to any dog handlers. If you can get in contact with me and just give me the likelihood that someone, the dog wouldn't have picked up the scent until they got 1.2 kilometres, basically where the kid was. I think he was within 30 or 15 metres. I can't remember the details off the top of my head. So this is also what I do. I send out to people that are far more experienced than I am in relation to this. Also for paramedics. Now, one of the things I picked up that I haven't heard yet, even in the coronial inquest, was the fact that they took the temperature of the body when they were doing resuscitation. Now, I would imagine that would actually give you a reading of temperature in degrees. However, the paramedic has stated in his statement that it was low. I have an issue with this only because what the fuck is low? What does that mean? Is it 10 degrees? Is it 5 degrees? Is it 15 degrees? Is it 20 degrees? Low. Low doesn't tell me anything. So for paramedics out there or health professionals, does it actually give you a rough average of what the body temp is at that time? The reason I would like this information is because water takes the heat out of a body 50 times faster than air. So you could then, if you actually had a temperature of the core, you just need a rough idea, and it will give you a rough estimate. It's just another tick in the investigation that you can cover off on. You can work out when the boy actually went into the water. Roughly speaking, I mean, it's not an exact science, but I'm sure there's professionals that can do a far better job than I do. But that's just one thing I'm looking at. So if you do know, I'll contact a few of the people I do know, and I'll contact a few of the dog handlers as well. If you do listen to it, and please do, I think the whole series has over 3 million downloads so far, so it's pretty popular. And I would like to see if I can get some answers. I'm just going to put my input in, and I'm going to. I've spoken a bit to Damo about it. I'm going to get him to look through it. He is completely far more independent than I am, only because he hasn't listened to the podcast. So, and I'm going to bounce off, and Damo might come back and say I'm a fucking idiot. But I think it's important to look into these things and try and get the answers, because you can't. The father's, and he's upset. Even this is 6 years down the track now, and rightly so. I found him to be quite a genuine person, and meeting with him, and I think he has definitely got some valid reasons for asking questions, as some of the community do as well. I also got the chance to talk to a couple of ex-cops down that way, and they passed on some other information, which is raises a couple of red flags as well. But like I said, every allegation should be looked into, because if you don't, you're not doing your job properly. Anyway, so yep, again, Happy New Year to everybody, and thanks for putting up with just the one ordinary cop today. It's a bit unfortunate, but Damo will be back next week. I've been chatting to him all the time, and I'm sure he'll fill you in more details in the little circumstances that surrounded his recent I won't say medical episode, but medical treatment that was required. So yes, thanks all again for listening. We'll be back again. Thank you to everybody that is got in contact with us. There's been heaps. There's some funny stories coming up. I was thinking about going into those today, but I'd prefer to do it with Damo. I think I replied to about 20 messages the other day, and there's another 6 or 7 since then. So keep them coming in. I am getting better at replying to everybody, because I just sit there on my phone and reply to them as they come in, or try to. I do miss a couple every now and again, and sometimes they come in as from either Instagram, Facebook, all different places. So I do miss them from time to time. But keep them coming in. Yep. Have a good New Year. Hopefully it's I hope we improve all the time. So hopefully policing improves in the year to come. And a big shout out to everybody that did work New Year's Eve, and I hope it was a safe one and a good one, and people behaved themselves. I know how much it can turn to shit. I've had a couple of those nights, and that's probably a story for another day. But yeah, stay safe. Keep on working and remain impartial. Ask questions, and just work and make sure you do the best possible job you can do, and that's all we can ask for. Anyway, that's the Two Ordinary Cops. We'll see you next week.